2024.
2014 NFL Draft is officially open.
What year is this?
2014 was loaded with insane talent.
The St.
2014. What'd I say?
Louis Rams select
I did not say 2024. What are you talking
Aaron
about?
Donald.
New York
Oh
Giants
shit, and he just retired. Damn, he's only been in the league 10 years and he already retired?
select Odell Beckham.
But none were a bigger deal on draft night than this guy.
I'm
Johnny
guessing
Football.
one of the two is your number one. Who does Houston take? I'm going to go with Johnny Manziel.
More than half of 2014's first-round picks have made a Pro Bowl in their careers. But it's been 10 years.
Jake
That's
Matthews.
a lifetime in the NFL. And most of
That's
these
Jake
guys
Matthews.
aren't in the league today.
Blake Bortles,
As for the
Sammy
top
Watkins,
10,
damn, they ain't
we've
made no
got
Super Bowl or
everything
Pro Bowl?
from future Hall of Famers to all-time busts.
What the fuck is that?
So why
I
don't
know
we go
he's
ahead
32. I'm saying. Like,
and dive on in.
retired.
With the
Got
number
back,
one
got up
pick,
too.
the Texans selected the most hyped-up defensive college player at the time, edge defender Jadeveon Clowney. There were rumors that Johnny Manziel was going to get picked here, but unfortunately for the Browns, that didn't happen. Clowney was described as picked here, but unfortunately for the Browns,
Johnny Manziel admitted to watching no tape during Brown's tenure in documentary. He watched no tape in Cleveland? Bro. How is that possible, bro?
that didn't happen. Clowney was described as, quote, a physical specimen with
tape?
rare size speed combination.
He just
Amongst
went in
physical
blind.
accomplishments like running a 4.540 at the size that he was at, USA Today called him by far the most freakish physical specimen in the
Freakish.
draft. The hype train from his high school days just kept building and building to where the expectations when Clowney entered the NFL were as high as they could get. We had never seen a consensus #1 prospect in high school be taken #1 overall in the NFL
Damn.
until Clowney. He was projected by NFL.com to be a perennial All-Pro. Well, after the draft, it felt like Clowney just sort of flew under the radar for a while. He only appeared in 4 games his rookie year due to injury. Then had a decent 2015 campaign, but wasn't any sort of star player by that
Yeah, he was
point.
aight the
While
whole
guys
time.
like JJ Watt and Whitney Merciless starred, Clowney was sort of a background player. Things began to turn a corner in 2016. JJ Watt suffered an injury that limited him to just 3 games,
Today
and
when
Clowney
Clowney's trash.
took more of center stage.
They hand it to him, and
Yeah, he's had his ups and downs, but he was mid though.
Jadeveon Clowney.
From 2016
Mid
to
overall.
2018, Clowney reached 3 straight Pro Bowls and ranked 49th, 32nd, and 63rd in the players' top 100, respectively. But after his 5th season, he and the Texans couldn't
Hard to
reach a
lose.
long-term agreement, leading to a trade to Seattle. And since that trade,
I don't know, I
Clowney's
didn't know he
career
was in
has
Seattle.
changed a lot. In terms of his play, he's been up and down since that initial trade.
Tennessee,
He has played for a total
Browns.
of 5
Damn.
franchises in 6 years. So ultimately,
Fuck.
Clowney has been a good NFL player, but wasn't even close to the hype that he had out of college. Some call
He's not
Clowney
bust,
a
though.
bust,
No.
but I think that's just because of his lack of statistical production. And the fact that because he's played for so many teams, no fans have any real loyalty to him. He did have one of his best seasons this last year in Baltimore. So 10 years in, and Clowney is still playing at a high level.
Yeah. He's still there.
With the second pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Rams selected offensive tackle Greg Robinson. And here's how he was described. Quote, big, strong, athletic.
And this is why, like, I don't understand why people are so scared to draft running backs, but not like offensive linemen. Like, this is obviously like a crazy example because I don't even know who that is, and he's an offensive lineman. But like, bro, like offensive linemen aren't like crazy to come by, bro. Like, I feel like you could draft a good second, third round offensive lineman. He can be so good. He can be a star in this league. I don't understand like drafting an offensive lineman like super high.
Overpowering
Doesn't
left
make sense to
tackle
me.
with the raw potential to become a premier franchise left tackle. However, in 3 underwhelming seasons, Robinson never quite figured out things in St. Louis. He ranked out 62nd of 74 eligible tackles in 2016 and was one of the worst run blockers in the league. He
Damn.
bounced around from guard to tackle and finally to the
Tried
Rams
everywhere.
bench before he was
Damn.
subsequently traded to the Lions for a 6th round pick. From there, Robinson only lasted 6 games in Detroit before being waived. Then he
That's
went to
crazy.
Cleveland for 2 years
Bruh.
before becoming a free agent and never signing with another NFL team.
Moved from
As far as to
second
what
pick
happened,
to
one
sixth
can
round.
only speculate. One potential factor is the major difference in the college scheme that he played in versus the NFL scheme. This has actually become a big issue in scouting tackle prospects, which has led to a lot more busts at the position over the last 10 years. And nowadays, it's difficult to find a good starting tackle in the NFL draft, whereas it used to be surefire. But to go back to Robinson, he has also clearly had issues off the field
Is he locked
that
up?
haven't helped him. On February 18, 2020, he was jailed for possession of 156.9 pounds of marijuana, and he was ultimately
Damn.
sentenced to 5 years probation. Then as recently as 2022, Robinson was arrested again
trapping.
for possession of another $120,000 of illegal
Jesus.
drugs.
Man, going back to the block with that
With the
NFL
third
money.
pick in the 2014
Keep breaking
NFL
that shit
draft,
down.
Jacksonville selected quarterback Blake Bortles. Compared to Johnny Manziel,
Bro.
Bortles was much less
Blake Bortles is exactly how I look at Kirk Cousins, like just a mid
known as a
quarterback.
college player. But at 6'5" and 230 pounds,
He'll get the job
he
done, but
had
he's
the
not taking it to the
typical
next
mold
level.
of an early first rounder. And here's how he was described. Quote, big, athletic, ascending quarterback with enough arm talent and intangibles to develop into a franchise
It doesn't
starter.
matter.
Is not yet a finished product,
Brilliant,
and
brilliant.
scouts' opinions vary on his ceiling, but elements of Bortles' skill set compared to some of the best in the game today, and his best football is ahead of him. But from the get-go, Bortles had one thing working against him.
We all know where you land as a quarterback matters.
Jacksonville had been a joke for years. They had
Yeah,
cycled
they've
through
been trash
multiple
so long.
coaches and quarterbacks, including another early first rounder, Blaine Gabbert, just 3 years prior to Bortles. And from day one, Bortles struggled, and Jacksonville was terrible. In 3 years, they never won more than 5 games in a season.
Well, what's his team
And
look
as
like, though?
bottom dwellers,
His team was
Bortles had
ass.
been an inefficient turnover machine. However, due to multiple years of picking high in the draft, Jacksonville
Ramsey.
entered 2017 loaded with pure
Leonard
talent.
Fournette,
As
damn.
Jacksonville rose as a team, Bortles played his
Did
best
too.
ball, leading
Yeah.
Jacksonville improbably to the AFC Championship game, where at one point they led by 10 points in the fourth
Damn.
quarter and looked destined to reach the Super Bowl, but fell flat. Even though Bortles finally had a decent season, it was clear from an outside perspective he just wasn't all that talented.
Jaguars will blank because of Blake Bortles.
Will underachieve. I don't mean to be a jerk to Blake Bortles. The facts are the facts. He just can't throw the football.
Damn.
Now, as much as I don't think that's fair,
Yeah, the
Bortles
face from gold
certainly
to black
wasn't worthy of
is
a
hard.
large contract extension, which is what Jacksonville gave him and immediately regretted.
Did they stick with him too long in their franchise? Absolutely. Was it ridiculous to try for the last 2 off seasons to build a team around Blake Bortles? Yes. Was the extension absurd? Of course.
Bortles struggled mightily
Of
in
course.
2018 before being traded to LA to be their backup and a practice squad guy. And after a few years of that gig with multiple
Damn,
teams,
where did that go?
Bortles retired in 2022 and hasn't started a game since 2018, which is
Damn.
wild considering that he started the AFC Championship that same calendar year.
That's crazy. That's
With
crazy.
the 4th overall pick, the Bills selected Clemson star Watkins was such a stud in college. Like Clowney, he passed the eye test with flying colors. At one point,
Yeah,
Clemson
Watkins.
had DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, and Martavis Bryant in the same receiving
Crazy.
unit. That's just terrifying. But here's how Watson was described going into the NFL. Quote, a legitimate #1 caliber receiver who stepped onto the field as a true freshman and made an immediate, game-changing impact. Has rare speed, soft hands, and the big playability to challenge NFL defensive backs as a rookie.
And with the
As a
Bills was
projected
best.
future Pro Bowl talent, the Bills were eager to get this guy on the field. Immediately, Watkins became the team's #1 receiver and finished his rookie year second among rookies in receiving yards and set the Bills' franchise records for rookie
Damn.
receiving yards and touchdowns. In year 2, despite
about
missing
those
3
when he got
games,
traded.
Watkins still eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark, finishing 9th in the league in yards per game and also scored 9 touchdowns.
Looking to Watkins. He's got it. Touchdown, Buffalo.
It was reasonable to assume that he was going to continue to develop, but things stalled out for Watkins at that point. A broken bone in his foot during the offseason led him to being on IR throughout the first half of the season. And when he came back, Watkins didn't do enough to impress the front office. They declined his 5th-year option and traded him to the Rams. From that point, Watkins became a serviceable number 2 or 3 for multiple teams, always playing a role, but nowhere near where he was expected to be coming out of college. The peak of his career had to be his huge 2019 playoff run, where he put up near 100 yards a game and had a huge showing in both the AFC title and Super Bowl. After playing for Baltimore and Green Bay in 2022, Watkins did not play in 2023, but is not officially retired as of yet. With the 5th overall pick, the Raiders selected outside linebacker Khalil Mack. At the University of Buffalo, Mack was a total legend. He holds the all-time NCAA record for forced fumbles and is also tied for the all-time lead in career tackles for loss. Here's a cool story about him. In NCAA 11, he was rated as a 46 overall player, which is just about as bad as it gets. So he chose to wear the number 46 as a motivational reminder. Here's how he was described entering the NFL. Quote, a havoc-wreaking rush linebacker with the burst and acceleration to excel as a right defensive end in a
Wasn't he like a 99 overall man?
Where should he go then?
Well, not number 1. I would take Khalil Mack in a heartbeat over him, and I wouldn't even sweat about it. And I will have a much, even if he develops, he's still not going to be better than Khalil Mack as a football player.
As a rookie, Mack immediately stood out. He was a very effective run defender right away, producing 16 tackles for loss as he ended the year as a Defensive Rookie of the Year candidate. From there, he became one of the best edge rushers in the game. The Raiders were back in playoff contention after a long hiatus, and Mack was at the forefront of this because he won Defensive Player of the Year in 2016. And after 3 dominant seasons in a row in Oakland, Mack was involved in a blockbuster trade to Chicago just days before the 2018 regular season began. In his debut, he became the new monster of the Midway.
Picked off by Mack. Mack with the interception, and Mack will take it all the way in for a touchdown. How crazy was that?
To this point, Khalil Mack has put together a career worthy of the Hall of Fame. He's made 8 Pro Bowls, playing for 3 different franchises. He has 3 first-team All-Pros to his name, and won that DPOY award in 2016. What's pretty crazy is he had his highest number of sacks in a season just this past year with 17. Even for a top 5 pick, Mack has exceeded expectations, and it'll be interesting to see how long he can continue to play at a high level. With the 6th overall pick, the Falcons selected tackle Jake Matthews. This dude has straight up football DNA. His grandpa played in the league.
I'm about to say his grandpa, his uncle, his fucking dad.
His dad was a Hall of Famer. His older brother was in the league at the time he was drafted, and he's also the cousin of Clay Matthews III, whose dad played in the league as well. And as good as many of his family members were, Jake Matthews appeared destined to be just as good as any of them.
Yeah, he is. He's just as good as them.
He was described as the following, quote, smart, tough, versatile franchise left tackle, capable of playing all 5 positions on the line.
Clay Matthews
now, tackles are tough to analyze.
When things go great, the quarterback's the first guy that gets the pat on the back, and the receiver gets the hug, and the defensive end that made the game-winning sack gets lifted up and carried off the field, and nobody remembers the O-line.
For 10 years, Jake Matthews has been an Iron Man.
It's one of the most impressive streaks in the NFL, though it's hardly discussed.
He played in all but 1 game his rookie year and hasn't missed a game since. Throughout that time, he's been a good to above average starting tackle based on his PFF grades. He's never been a special all-time level player like Trent Williams or Joe Thomas, but he's given the Falcons quality above average tackle play without ever missing time, and they have rewarded him for that. Back in 2018, they gave Matthews a $75 million extension, and then in 2022, added on another 3-year, $52 million extension. Some may expect crazy accolades to be considered worthy of a top 10 pick, but I think Matthews has proven to be worthy of it in his own way. I saw this quote on Reddit that perfectly encapsulates his career. When he was drafted, I heard they can plug him in at left tackle for the next 10 years and not worry about it. They were right. With the 7th overall pick, the Bucs selected Texas A&M wide receiver Mike Evans. The duo of Johnny Football and Mike Evans was about as hyped as it got in college football in those days. With Evans being 6'5", 230, and having great athleticism, the playmaking ability in college was off the charts. Here's how he was described entering the NFL. Quote, "He's a big, physical, strong-handed, West Coast possession receiver with playmaking ability who projects as a number 2 in the pros, where he will make his money as a chain mover and red zone target." Well, right off the bat, his rookie year was sensational. Evans finished tied for 4th in the league in receiving touchdowns and eclipsed the 1,000-yard mark. Something that, amazingly, to this day, he has never failed to reach. That's just insane. Whether it's been
he's got 1,000 yards every season. I didn't know that was a stat.
Josh McCown, Jameis Winston, Tom Brady, or Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans has been the very definition of consistency, with 5 Pro Bowls to his name.
Now launches one, and it is caught for a touchdown by Mike Evans.
He's had a similar career arc to Jake Matthews, but has been an even better player relative to his position. Evans has never been considered the best receiver in the NFL, but he just continued to be a reliable number 1 receiver for Tampa Bay all these years. In 2020, he helped them win the Super Bowl. Then just this last season, in year 10, he tied Tyreek Hill for the most receiving touchdowns in the league. As a man who's made over $100 million in his career, Evans just re-signed with the Bucs on a 2-year, $52 million deal. As we have seen many of the excellent receivers from the 2014 class fade away into lesser roles or out of the league, Mike Evans has separated himself from the pack. And at the age of 31, we will see if he can continue to produce with impeccable consistency as he goes on to carve out a case for the Hall of Fame. With the 8th overall pick in 2014, the Cleveland Browns selected Oklahoma State cornerback Justin Gilbert. Perhaps the most athletic corner in the class, Gilbert was electric in college, taking 6 returns to the house as a senior while also performing outstandingly as a defensive back. He was described as the following, quote, "A big, fast, athletic, man-cover corner capable of locking down receivers and creating big plays in the return game. Is the most physically gifted cover man in this year's draft." But almost immediately, problems began to arise in Cleveland. Gilbert struggled to move up the depth chart as a rookie.
It's all about mindset in this league. He has all the physical ability in the world. It's all about mindset. Do you take your job seriously?
Multiple teammates, including Dante Whitner and Carlos Dansby, publicly criticized Gilbert, calling his attitude into question. He also was a healthy scratch one game for being late to a team meeting, a problem that continued to be an issue in his 2nd season. Gilbert saw even less playing time in 2015. One big reason was he continuously showed up late to team meetings, a problem that he blamed on being a heavy sleeper. 2 years in, and it was evident that this guy was not ready for the pros mentally and didn't have the natural ability to make up for it. Cleveland traded him to Pittsburgh, where he lasted just a season as a backup before never appearing in another NFL game. In 2017, Gilbert was suspended a year for violating the substance abuse policy, and since then, he's been out of the NFL. And we can safely say that his NFL career was a massive disappointment. As of 2023, he's playing arena football for the Sioux City Bandits. With the 9th overall pick in 2014, the Vikings selected UCLA linebacker Anthony Barr. Towering at 6'5" and 255 pounds, Barr was highly productive at UCLA and often showed off that wow factor in his play. At that size, he ran a blistering 4.41 40-yard dash, which is just absurd. It's also worth noting that his father and 2 of his uncles were NFL players. He was described on NFL.com as the following, quote, "A highly disruptive, athletic specimen with the pass rush potential to effortlessly emerge as a double-digit sack producer." Once Barr arrived in Minnesota, things looked promising right away. He was a Rookie of the Year candidate and was one of 3 Viking defenders named to the PFF All-NFC North team.
Who loses the football? Recovered, touchdown, Barr, the Vikings win it!
The following year, Barr would begin his string of 4 straight Pro Bowl level seasons, becoming one of the anchors on a vaunted Vikings defense, one that reached the NFC title game in January 2018. After 5 successful seasons, in 2019, Barr signed a 5-year, $67.5 million contract to stay in Minnesota. But after the 2019 season, Barr's body hasn't held up the same as it did early in his career. A torn pec kept him out of the majority of 2020. A knee injury in 21 kept him out early. And now in 2023, he seems to be physically not what he once was, as he was mostly a practice squad player for the Vikings this last year. Overall, although he isn't the same player he was
on Dallas in 22,
Barr was an excellent addition to the Vikings defense for around 6 years, certainly making him worthy of the price they paid for him back in 2014.
Was the last pick.
With the 10th pick in the 2014 NFL Draft, the Lions selected tight end Eric Ebron.
He's good.
Cut in the mold of the modern fast athletic tight end, Ebron became the highest tight end selected in Lions franchise history. And here's how he was described. Quote, highly athletic, highly productive F tight end, dripping with upside and mismatch capability. Well, at the beginning, Ebron entered the regular season 3rd on the Lions depth chart and didn't make a huge impact as a rookie. However, he saw his catch and yard numbers increase to where he was a decent receiving tight end over the next few years. He was never really a standout player and never developed into anything more than an average starter. After 4 years of average play, the Lions declined Ebron's 5th-year option, and the Colts picked him up in 2018. A change of scenery proved to be a big deal, as Ebron had a career year, achieving Pro Bowl honors and leading all tight ends in touchdowns.
Putting some air under it, has his man, stumbles, touchdown Indianapolis.
However, despite the newfound success, this was sort of a one-year wonder, because Ebron didn't have another season close to that level of production. And after barely getting any targets in 2021 with the Steelers, Ebron hasn't been on a roster since. He definitely was an underwhelming top 10 pick, with one big production year. But amongst other tight ends from the same class, he definitely was the best of them, as there really wasn't any other guy who did much in the league. Overall, the top 10 picks from 2014 was a mixed bag. Some great, some bad, and some average. Now, one thing that's crazy about the Rams draft was even though their number 2 overall pick was a total bust, their second pick of the draft and 13th overall more than made up for it. Shout out to the recently retired Aaron Donald.
4th and 1.
AA run.
Burrow trying to keep it going, gets spun down, gets it away, and incomplete.
And guess who?
Wait, is it? That's it for you?
I mean, you don't even have to think about it.
That